Hey guys, I'm gonna show you how I made this treehouse diorama. I don't know if you can see it properly with the reflection, but yeah, it's a treehouse and it's pretty big. Everything you see about this is handmade. So the houses are handmade, the tree is handmade, and I'm gonna show you step by step how I did that. This has been one of the most lengthy projects I've done because it just takes a lot of time to create this. With a lot of different steps and a lot of details. First, I created the tree. Then I added all the plankings, then the roofs, and then in the final steps, I added all the foliage. And then as a final step, the base, the epoxy, and the finalization with the greeneries, the leaves and reeds that are all down here. Yeah, have fun. I'll show you. Okay, so I went to a forest and I found a few already cut down, dried up branches. Drilling holes in them with a very small drill. You drill it in the trunk or you drill it inside of these branches. You drill literally on the inside of every branch. Now once that's done, you stick in a few of those nice little wooden sticks, satay prikker. You dig in a hole in exactly the middle of each branch, and then you connect the two parts, as you can see right here. So our next step requires a special ingredient called toilet paper, regular toilet paper, anything goes. And you make it sure you use only one piece is already a lot for this step. And what we're going to do is we're going to use the wet, hardened toilet paper, hardened it with white PVA glue. We use that. It's structured to mimic the structure of the bark. So I wrap it around a bit like this, and then I wet in a brush. I wetten it and then put it in the glue, and then I just start fiddling around with it. As you can see, very quickly texture starts to happen. You shouldn't use too much water in this step. When you do, it gets ugly. Make it appear as if these parts were never separated in the first place. So I glued these ropes to my tree. Some are still loose, as you can see, which are gonna come in handy at the next step, and these were easily attached with a small elastic band around the ropes. This is only for the trees that you want to make tropicaliente. I'm gonna show you a bit of our next process. It's gonna be all about building the base. So you roughly need to know where you want to position your tree, and then, well, make the hole. Great. Now next step is, of course, using wood filler to fill it all up. This is just some clay. I like to use clay that dries on its own. But the thing is, it doesn't really matter. You can just use any clay that suits your needs. It's actually not really a requirement that it dries hard. You just need some kind of filler. Instance, I use this. You cannot use a more fluid filler because that won't work. So you need something that will start solid when you start working with it. So as you can see, maybe here, this dried up perfectly. Now I've made a few small steps that I didn't film, which I'm going to show you now. I started already building the treehouse. Now what you create are actually squares of wooden material, as you can see here, and you put them in position. And this is really where I cannot help you anymore, because it really depends on how your tree is gonna look. But you take the square and you use something to hold it down, and then you start building. As you can see from the square, you start with vertical pieces of wood, and then again horizontal, and the floorboards, and then walls and roofs, which is the next step. I use just regular smaller, just make sure they're not too forceful, because if they are, they'll drag things in position in the way you don't want them. And yeah, well, it's definitely recommended to start planning with this ahead of the building process, which I could have done better, to be honest. But okay, so use your creativity here. There are no rules. You can build a house in the way you want to. Make it a miniature treehouse. You can see a bit of the techniques here. The branch was in the way, but I'm gonna use that. So yeah, well, as you can see, I finished the windows, which obviously need a small bit of the wood. So you cut it in half with a small knife. You really need to watch your fingers here. I cut my hands multiple times. So you just cut it in half like this. You create a few parts of that. And yeah, well, then it's just measuring it all up. And I also used some small woods to create these diagonal sidelines. Now I finished up all the bits and pieces that I kind of forgot, like for example this side of the house, and I'm going to show you now a few final examples of how to do the roof, but I'm going to show you from another angle. So what you need is a brush like this. It needs to be natural. I use softly. I use a cutter, but that's to get a better grip, but you use it to pull it out. Let me show you again. Use it to pull it out. Then grab it by the end. Use the same plier to get the iron out. And now you need to use a scissor to cut it open. And this is really important, because if you don't, there's going to be tension. There's going to be tension on the bowed lines. So you cut it open. On the other side, I've started to build a small elevator, which, as you can see, is just a row of wood. Then I applied some sides, some smaller beams, and then I used these super small rings, put them on each corner, make sure they are diagonally facing each other. Then I attached some ropes. So I'm going to use some wood filler to fill up the final parts of the textures. Mainly the main goal is to get the structure right. So I'm gonna mix the epoxies to create the water effect. Now the dimensions of this are 3 parts to 7 or 1.5 to 3.5.
It all depends on what